Alrighty, welcome everyone to Career Confidential on LinkedIn Live. My name is Mike Silvestri. It's my colleague Julie Bales. We will be hosting this afternoon. Kind of just be having a casual discussion about recruiting, what it's like being in the trenches as recruiters, dealing with candidates and clients. Myself, I'm new to Vaco. Been here for just under 2 months. I'm not new to recruiting. I've been doing that for just under 10 years. And today we're just going to kind of go over like career drivers, how we build relationships and, kind of some of the things that we, really value. So a little bit, I'm the director of recruiting in Connecticut, specialized in finance and accounting and HR on the permanent side. And I'll let my colleague introduce herself.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for letting me join you today. So, hi, everyone. I'm Julie Bales. I've been a part of the Vaco Connecticut team now for just shy of 4 years. I've been in the recruiting industry for just a little over 15 years. Spent a bulk of time on the admin and operations side of recruiting. And then about 4 years ago was given the opportunity to change my career and move into a full recruiting position. And so that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. So far, so good. I'm still here. I'm still loving it. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Like Mike, I'm also in the Connecticut office, and I focus on permanent searches within accounting, finance, and HR.
There you go. Awesome. And, I do have to say, one of the reasons I, joined Vaco is, during the interview process with you, Julie, I feel like you and I just like kind of connected with the same philosophy and about recruiting, kind of how we handle everything, on both sides, clients and candidates. We both, personally have always been interested in learning about the whole person, clients and candidates both, because, when dealing with, real people, creating real relationships is what this business is all about. So I'm curious, we're in the trenches. What is the first question that you are getting from candidates today in their job search?
So without a doubt, I would say probably 90% of the time, one of the first questions and one of the first drivers that candidates have as they're considering making a job change is flexibility. What type of flexibility does a company offer? Do they allow for remote work flexibility? Can you live anywhere in the country and still work for the organization? Or can you live in the same state and maybe do a hybrid schedule? Pre-COVID, that question almost did not exist at least in my world, when I would do recruiting. But now 2 years into the pandemic, people seeing the changes in the world, the flexibility, the technology, that is without a doubt the first question that I get with almost every single phone call.
Right.
So I'm curious, Mike, with you, obviously you're relatively new to Vaco, so you're speaking to new clients, speaking to new candidates. Are you experiencing that same thing? Are you seeing anything different?
Yeah, no, it's exactly the same thing. It's pretty much the first 10 seconds in the call. Obviously, after you make an introduction, why potentially keeping an eye open or something like that, because it's extremely important, the flexibility. Obviously, the whole world was kind of thrown a curveball with COVID and, being forced to work from home. But then I guess you could say like something, came out of that, people realize you could still be functional at home. So, that's definitely one thing that, I'm seeing a lot of and a lot of questions. And I mean, before I mentioned this before, I was, before 2020 happened, one of the number one questions I was getting is there a chance you can work 1 day a week from home or something like that? Now it's kind of, now it's kind of required. But I mean, before COVID, I think we talked about this. You weren't getting a whole lot of questions about like working from home or flexibility, right?
I wasn't. And honestly, if a client reached out to me with a job that they needed filled that required the candidate to work remotely out of their home, it was almost next to impossible for me to fill that position, because at that time, people just were not accustomed to that. I mean, we've known what we've known within the workforce for so many years now. Everybody's comfortable or was comfortable in what we had established, which was essentially going into the office 5 days a week, utilizing the technology that we had, but utilizing it within the office, being around your coworkers in person. And so with COVID and with everyone essentially being forced to have to take that technology and utilize it at home in a different capacity, I think that just really changed the ballgame. And so now when I get a position in from a client where they're asking that somebody be in the office 5 days a week, that is just as challenging for me now as it was 4 years ago when I was trying to fill a remote position when nobody wanted to work out of their home.
Right. And I mean, that's very similar to what I'm, experiencing as well. And I think we're at that stage. Are you having these conversations with your clients, like letting them know? I like to try to tell everybody right away, like, listen, this is the market. This is where we are.
Mm-hmm.
It's the new expectation is to have some flexibility. Are you getting kind of like, I don't want to say pushback, but are you kind of like, informing your clients of like what the structure is like in the market?
I mean, it's definitely a conversation I try to have with every client that I speak with so that they understand what the market is dictating now with candidates, as far as candidates saying they want that flexibility. It's not a conversation that every client necessarily wants to hear because they're accustomed to people being in the office 5 days a week and they want to get back to that environment again. But it's something that I really feel strongly that we need to have a conversation about to set the expectations, because not only is it affecting them as a company, but it's going to affect how we're going to be able to help them fill that particular search. Because if it's a position where there is technology available to do it from home and a candidate knows that, and they know that there's 50 other companies out there in the same area that will give them that flexibility, they probably are not going to be as receptive to interviewing for a job that requires them to be in 5 days a week. They're really going to say, let me try with the hybrid opportunities first before I decide to kind of give in to what it is I want and interview it for a position that requires I be in every day.
Right. And, I do understand, the value of being in an office, having that camaraderie, that, interaction with your coworkers. There is a lot of value in that.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, as
Absolutely.
the technology keeps improving, you feel interactive. I know, you and I both actually work remotely, and we talk almost every day. And it's different, being on the video, being on the FaceTime. I mean, it's something that we've really grown accustomed to. So I mean, are you seeing like a certain certain skill level that has more of a demand to work from home? For example, like a manager, are they, pushing for more work from home balance, or what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the desire to work from home and to have some flexibility, whatever degree that is there amongst every level within the organization that I've interacted with. So whether it's somebody that's more in an entry level position or somebody that's maybe in a controller position who has, really worked their way up the corporate ladder, I think the desire is there, but I think the reality is, and I think people know it as they continue to move up the corporate ladder, that some of those nice perks that you'd like to have aren't always terribly realistic when you're in a management level position. You need to have more face time when you're in a manager position. And if you're expecting your employees to be in the office 3 days a week, and those employees are rotating throughout the week as to who's there on what day, then it's really important as a manager to have that face time with every single employee, which may mean that you have to be in the office every day. So the desire is there, whether it's always terribly realistic. I mean, that's a conversation to be had amongst the candidate and the client to determine what that position looks like, what the expectation is, and really what's going to move the business forward and get the job done at the end of the day. So it's definitely there for everyone, though, but people have to be willing to compromise a little bit more, especially as they move up.
Right. And like you mentioned, it kind of sets them apart from competition. When you have that flexibility, I mean, that's what folks are kind of leaning toward. But kind of pivot away from the work from home and flexibility. In terms of, I think I mentioned it before, like our philosophy when it comes to building relationships with people.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the things that we connected with about is I we're in a recruiting business.
Mhm.
People are smart. They know how we make money
Mhm.
essentially. So I've always been of the school of thought just to be very honest, be very transparent with people, and kind of let them make their own choices. You just kind of guide them through the process. Do you feel like your success is attributed to being able to understand the candidates and like really try to guide them and build trust with them? Is that something important to you?
I mean, that's huge for me, and that's a huge part of why I got into this business.
Right.
Because I've been working now for 30 years. And so during that 30-year period, I have had the opportunity as a candidate to work with recruiters. Whether, it was when I was in my entry level days or whether it's, I've moved through my career and looked at more managerial level positions. So I've kind of run the gamut of speaking with recruiters throughout the industry. And so for me, what I found was that oftentimes I felt as a candidate that I was not heard, or oftentimes I felt like I was not respected. I felt like I was more of a dollar sign, and it was if I could be placed and if I could make commission for the recruiter, that was great. But if I couldn't, it seemed like I didn't always hear from those recruiters once they knew that I was no longer going to be an asset to them. And so for me, getting into this business, that is what really drove me to want to sit here today and have these types of conversations with yourself, or really represent a brand like Vaco, because I feel as though the commitment is there with Vaco to establish relationships and to really invest in getting to know your candidates, invest in getting to know your clients. It's not a numbers game. It really is a relationship game. And so for me, that was critical as I was thinking about making the next step and moving into a full-fledged recruiting position. I didn't want it to be just in an environment where it was important to meet a certain metric of people that I spoke to each day. I truly wanted an environment of quality over quantity. And that's what Vaco has allowed me to do. And I feel like that is what helps to make me successful in the position now. So yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious what you've experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of very, very similar to what you're thinking. Even if we, for example, we have a job, we have a candidate, obviously we would love to make that match today.
Hmm.
Sometimes the timing's not right, whether, the candidate's buying a new house or something has changed.
Yeah.
The key is keeping that relationship because, maybe in a year, maybe in a couple of years, maybe in a couple of months, they're going to come around and they're going to be ready. They're going to be ready to move. And you can't be too pushy.
Yep.
You need to be there. You need to be available for clients and candidates both. And I think that's why we've had success in this industry. And
Hmm.
that's why we're still around. When I started the industry, I had hair, and now I don't. So
Well, and I think this is really where the career drivers piece of things come into play when you're establishing those relationships with candidates. It's understanding what is driving them at that moment in their life. What is driving them to think about making a change? Is it the location of the office that they're working in? Is it the compensation? Is it the title? What is it that's driving them to think about making a change? And so that for me is what's most important, is having those conversations up front, investing the time to really get to know a person, not just talk through their resume, but really get to know them as a person, and also let them get to know me and trust me and just establish a bond. So whether they decide today they're ready to start looking at opportunities that we might have, or they're not ready for another 6 months, but they remember me in 6 months and pick up the phone and call me because they know that we've had that conversation. That for me is where it all really pieces together.
Right. It's about being genuine and then being be approachable. So when the time is right, you have the right opportunity. I couldn't agree more when you said about it's not a numbers game. It really is a relationship building game, and
Yep.
it's just like you said, being yourself. Being genuine. I myself, I'm a pretty ridiculous human being, and I'm myself with clients and candidates. Just to, I don't know. I feel like it just kind of alleviates things, like any tension. Just like, all right, this is a real person. He's
You can
trying to.
tell when a person is being genuine. You can tell when somebody is being their authentic self, and when somebody's not allowing that to shine through, it
Right.
feels more forced. And so I think the fact that Vaco really allows for everybody to operate the way that it feels most comfortable to them and allows them to be their most authentic self. For
Right.
me, that's what really drives me as I look at my own career. That for me is so critically important.
Right. No, that's perfect. I mean, you're absolutely right. Vaco, does give you, that chance to, continue to be yourself. For example, I was about to channel my inner Top Gun and, put on some aviators and get a mustache for this, but I didn't want to throw you off. I didn't, and, I do value my marriage as well, so I want to keep that
Yeah.
going. But
Embrace your Tom Cruise.
you would have to look at it every day, and I'm sure that's so I mean, there is, obviously there is one aspect to the recruiting industry. It's kind of, I would say it's kind of the genesis of it has like emerged in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, and it's the G word, ghosting. Um,
Yes.
it's all over the place. It's not just candidates, clients, us, whatever. It's a thing. It's
Mhm.
not going anywhere. Um, and I mean, myself, I'm just kind of trying to understand it, and sometimes it's just not understandable. But I mean, what about you? Are you seeing ghosting? Like, has it been an issue for you? Like, how have you been approaching this new phenomenon?
Yeah, I mean, ghosting, yeah, it doesn't just exist in online dating. It exists in the recruitment world as well. And it's
Right.
very much a factor of life at this point within many aspects, but within recruiting, I mean, it's something I hear from candidates about on a weekly basis, I'd have to say. I mean, candidates that I think that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear candidates say from their interaction with recruiters is they never heard back from the recruiter. They got called, they discussed a job, their resume was submitted, and they never heard anything again. And they followed up, they've done what they need to do to try and get the feedback to find out what's happening. Are they moving forward? Are they not? And they're just being ghosted over and over again. And so I think, unfortunately, that has given the recruiting industry to some degree a bad name because so many people have experienced that with recruiters. And again, that's another reason why I wanted to get into this business because I really make an effort to not do that. I can't say I'm never going to do it. I can't say I'm not
Right.
going to forget to make that phone call sometimes because I'm human and sometimes I will get feedback and then I'll move on to something else and I'll forget that I need to call a candidate. But I would say 90% of the time I make a very concerted effort to have those difficult conversations with candidates and let them know what the feedback is. Whether it was, you showed up to the interview and you didn't ask any questions, you had nothing prepared, or you showed up to the interview and you weren't dressed appropriately, or you didn't research the company beforehand. Whatever those questions, whatever that feedback is, it can be hard to have those conversations with people and to explain to them like, here's why you're not moving forward in the process. But I'm of the belief that if you don't share that with somebody, they're never going to know what they need to do different next time. And they're going to be in this constant cycle of always grappling for the answers as to why they're not moving forward in their career. And so I want to have those difficult conversations with candidates. I want them to know, and also with clients, because sometimes the feedback from candidates, sometimes a candidate is wanted and they've decided they're not interested because an organization has a certain reputation for, a very unhealthy work-life balance or whatever it might be. So for me, having those conversations and not ghosting candidates is something I really put a lot of effort into not doing. I want to set myself apart from my competition in the recruiting world, and let candidates know that if they entrust their career in me and they entrust developing a relationship with me, that we will have those tough conversations. And it's not always going to be comfortable, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it because I have your best interest at hand and I want to see you succeed.
Right.
So yeah, ghosting is very much a real thing. But it doesn't have to be. It just, people need to be more comfortable having those hard conversations.
And that's where, yeah, you're right. It's it's a little bit out of our control when other recruiters, other candidates don't get back to each other. So the best we can do is just kind of handle that process ourselves.
Yep.
And just like you said, it's about having those. It's about giving respect.
Mm-hmm.
They,
Yeah,
they
respect.
went on the interview. Yeah, they went on the interview. They took time out of their day. They deserve to know why or why not they weren't a fit for the role, and the company deserves the same way. So I
Yep.
mean, it's definitely been it was definitely interesting. What I found is, and you can tell me if you have a similar experience. I would say like the likelihood of being ghosted has, for me, has gone down if you have like a genuine conversation with
Mm-hmm.
someone at first, so they realize, so like, all right, I he respects me enough to set me up on this interview or kind of expose me to the job market. I'm gonna return that respect. And I just think like you meant everything you mentioned before, just having that philosophy of building the relationships will will ultimately continue to build in the trust, continue building a good work relationship. It's a two-way street, really. I mean, I know there's a lot of candidate clients that are complaining about candidates ghosting and vice versa, but it just has to stop. Like, people have to start respecting each other, and then I think that'll kind of like trickle down, hopefully.
Yeah.
um so I mean, at this point, I mean, is there any other topics? I think what we can do is kind of field some questions and kind of see if we have any answers. um so one of the questions we got from the audience is, can we discuss the rise in job scanners out here now? If you're looking for a job, it's a 50-50 split between job scams and real jobs.
Yeah.
Do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. There is definitely a lot of job scammers out there now, and there are recruiters who will post job ads just to attract candidates, but don't necessarily have that particular job that they've posted.
Right.
And that, I think that's hard. It's hard to know what's legitimate, what's not legitimate. But I think that's when you, as a candidate, invest your time in developing a relationship with a recruiting firm and with a recruiter within that firm, and really entrusting them with your career again and your job search. I think it can go a long way with helping you to avoid situations like that. Because, like I tell candidates I speak with all the time, feel free to ping me if you see a position posted that you're interested in. If it's posted by Vaco, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can look into it for you, as opposed to them seeing something and having to go through it. And also, even if it's not a job within Vaco, I can maybe look at the job ad and give them an idea as to whether it looks like it might not be a legitimate position or not. It's hard to tell. It's just like with any scam, it's not always crystal clear, and sometimes you just are at the mercy of the scammers. But I
Right.
think developing that relationship with a recruiter will go a long way in helping you to avoid a lot of those situations.
Absolutely. It really goes back to, I think, the theme of this entire conversation is trust. Building the trust, like you said. If you see the role out there, you have a relationship with that recruiter. Um, they'll let you know, what the job is, kind of give you the details about it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, as we kind of like wrap up a little bit here, is there any advice you would have for someone actively looking for a role, or even passively looking for their next step, who's thinking about working with a recruiter, working with Vaco? Um, any advice you could give them?
I mean, honestly, the best time to be looking for a job is when you have a job. that's the best time to be keeping yourself open to opportunity, because you never know what's around the corner. So if you have just allowed yourself to at least have a 15-30 minute conversation with a recruiter, share your resume, share some details about what's important to you now, today, maybe in a year, if as you look down the road to what your job search is. I think just investing that time and developing that relationship again will go a long way, so that when you're really ready to pull the trigger, it will be a lot easier, because you'll already have made that contact with somebody that you trust, and you know that person has your best interest at hand. So I would say, don't necessarily wait until you're in an active job search to develop those relationships. Do it now. Do it while you're employed. It doesn't mean we're going to send you out on every job and make you interview every week. That's not going to happen. It will happen when you want it to happen, but the relationship will have been built up until that point.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. Especially when you're already secure, you already have something. It's a little you can be a little more selective during the whole process, which kind of makes you're making the right choice because you're not forced to make that choice.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. I mean, yeah. I mean, I is there anything else you think you want to touch on in terms of because you and I, it's interesting. We deal with clients and candidates, so we see both sides of the coin, so to speak. Another question we just got is, do you think certifications work in certain positions? And I I mean, what it depends. It really depends, and I know that's not an answer anybody wants to hear that it depends, but it really does.
Yeah.
For example, if you have a public, accounting role, SEC reporting, you're actually the CPA is highly preferred.
Hmm.
And some HR certifications as well. It really is tricky. Each client is a little bit different. I think it always helps. I think the degree is huge, especially in accounting, finance, and HR. That seems to be something heavily preferred. Not to say that someone without a degree can't be a great asset to a company, but in my experience of getting you through the door,
Hmm.
having the degree, I think trumps everything. I mean, how do you feel about
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I will say though that I do think with like a payroll position, having a certification in payroll can go a long way. So if you're somebody that's really looking to, you love payroll, you want to further your career, I don't know if necessarily having a bachelor's degree is going to be the most appreciated by a client, but that certification, I think it's a CPP, I believe, that can really help to further your career. I think it really depends. I mean, if you're looking to become a controller down the road, a CFO down the road, then having that degree, having that CPA, that obviously is going to help you tremendously. A certification in lieu of those degrees is probably not going to be the right path for you. But for a payroll position, for maybe more of a junior level HR position, definitely certifications, they're never going to hurt.
right? That's perfect. And one thing I did want to mention, this is a great platform for us to kind of like, get that across to people is what we're seeing, with candidates making their selections. And Julie, you can, chime in if you agree or disagree, is the clients that have their process, you know, down, like in terms of, scheduling the interviews, giving feedback, they tend to, be the ones that are attracting that top talent. I mean,
Mhm.
and it sometimes, like you mentioned, it's a difficult conversation to have with a client. So it's like, hey, this person took this job because they got back to him right
Mhm.
away, right away. They moved forward at the end of the week, and that person's gone. I mean, the market is moving very extremely quickly right now. I mean, would you get a sense of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The market is intense, and if you don't keep the process flowing and keep that momentum alive and keep the candidate engaged in the process, then you stand a very strong risk of losing them to another company that is keeping the momentum going and keeping the process moving, and they're going through first, second, third interviews to an offer very quickly. Um, you know, right now, to get top talent, it's most important, I feel, to engage, a good search firm and be ready to move quickly when you engage that search firm. Trust the people that you're engaging with, in this case, Vaco, and trust that we, are going to go out and bring you the best talent we can. But know that that best talent is also interviewing probably 2 or 3, 4 other places. And so when we say you need to move quickly, we're saying it because we know that you could potentially lose a couple of really strong candidates if you don't. So yeah, that's super important right now. There's just not time to waste.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I try to tell clients, sometimes is they have, they're working on things. They have real, and you and I, we network all day. That's what we do. So, having one of us on board can really help their process.
Yeah.
So, I mean, kind of wrapping things up here. Are there any other? Let's see. We got another question. Sorry, my apologies. Any advice for a recent college grad with no internship experience? Julie, you can take this one.
I think the best advice with that candidate is that, obviously, again, establish a relationship with a good recruiter, but make yourself open not only to just permanent work, but also make yourself open to contract to perm work. That's a great way to get your foot in the door at a solid company. And unfortunately, not everybody is always amenable to that idea because they don't want to have to deal with not having the benefits. You can get benefits as a contract employee through Vaco. So that reason, really, don't allow that to be what stops you from taking a contract position. If there's a good firm that's offering a contract role and it's in the field that you want to be in, move forward with that and take that opportunity and get your foot in the door someplace. That's probably the best advice I can give.
Absolutely. That's perfect. And what advice I would give an entry level person, I actually give the same advice to controller level, CFO level, is, taking every meeting, I think is great. You never know. I mean, that's how I landed here with Vaco. I took a meeting.
Yeah.
Then you develop a relationship, you meet people, and it just opens doors, networking wise. Well, I mean, this has been great. I mean, I know you and I were a little nervous about what we would talk about. Yeah, I mean, it's live. But all in all, I mean, I think in the end, you and I have been doing this for a while, and we both built solid reputations in this area. And I think we can talk about this. That time, 33 minutes. That went by pretty quickly. I think we could talk about this for days. Because that's what we do. But yeah, I mean, Julie, anything else to add to wrap it up?
No, I mean, all I would say is to anybody that's out there listening, you are more than welcome to reach out to myself. I know Mike feels the same way on LinkedIn at any time, and I'm happy to have conversations with people. And that's how I get to know some of my best candidates. So don't ever hesitate to reach out and message on LinkedIn, and we can set up time to chat. So, but yeah, I'm happy to have conversations. And otherwise, I just wish everyone the best. And I think that wraps it up for us.
That wraps it up. This has been great. Everyone, like she mentioned, reach out to us anytime. And thank everyone who did stay on for the whole 35 minutes. Thank you very much. And we'll see you when we see you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.